My name is Peter Rose and I'm the editor of Australian Book Review. ABR's States of Poetry is a major new project intended to highlight the quality and diversity of contemporary Australian poetry. Funded by Copyright Agency's Cultural Fund, this is the first federally arranged poetry anthology published in Australia. At present, 5 states and the ACT are available on our website, all open access. The New South Wales States of Poetry anthology was launched by state editor Elizabeth Allen at Gleebooks in Sydney earlier this year. ABR's esteemed Laureate David Malouf introduced the first ABR Laureates Fellow, Michael Aiken, who read extracts from his fellowship project, Satan Repentant, an epic poem about themes of contrition. This fascinating work will be published in part in the August issue of ABR. Elizabeth Allen then introduced the 6 New South Wales poets who contributed their works to the anthology: David Malouf himself, Susie Anderson, Pam Brown, Toby Fitch, Kate Middleton, and Fiona Wright. Here is Elizabeth Allen to introduce the event.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming along to tonight's launch. Before we begin the proceedings, I'd just like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. It's upon their ancestral lands that Gleebooks is built. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Liz and I'm the events manager here at Gleebooks. And it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the shop and also on behalf of Australian Book Review. We're here to celebrate the launch of the New South Wales States of Poetry anthology, which I had the privilege of editing for ABR. We're also celebrating the role of local poet Michael Aiken as the inaugural ABR Laureates Fellow. And we are pleased that he's going to be reading his poems tonight, along with 5 of the poets published in the anthology. Susie Anderson, the 6th poet in the anthology, is sadly unable to be here tonight as she's currently travelling interstate and she sends her apologies. I would now like to invite Peter Rose, the editor of ABR, to the stage to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz, and good evening, everyone. My role is a brief one, just to thank a few people and to tell you very briefly about States of Poetry. I think it's fair to say that ABR's interest in and coverage of poetry has diversified and intensified in recent years. In 2001, ABR added new poetry to its repertoire, not because the incoming editor was a poet, but because new poetry seems to belong in any national literary review. For the poets in the room also, an increasing commitment to paying poets properly, and those poems that appear in the magazine now attract a payment of $300, as they should. We created a poetry prize in 2005, which was renamed the Peter Porter Poetry Prize, the most alliterative prize in the world, in 2011, and will be on offer again with at least about $7,500, I think in about July or August. In addition, of course, we go on publishing in every issue reviews of new collections. One of the additions, further programs that we launched about 4 or 5 months ago is Poem of the Week. There are about 20 of these to date, online, open access, in which poets read but also introduce, reflect on the poems. The penultimate one is published in the current issue, David Malouf reading his wonderful poem, Visitation on Myrtle Street, which I really commend to you. And in a nice touch, it was actually recorded on Myrtle Street too, in David's kitchen. The idea for a federal, if you like, federally arranged poetry anthology occurred to us last year. And one of the impulses of this state-by-state organisation of a national anthology compiled by 7 different state editors, as we call them. It sounds like the ABC, doesn't it? The state editor was to, I suppose, one of the reasons why it's been well received elsewhere, especially in father states, is that the equal weighting given to poetry in each state, and I think particularly poets in whom I've spoken to about it in Perth and Adelaide and Brisbane have appreciated this, because sometimes there is a sense of being an overrepresentation in the two biggest states. When we were formulating this idea, Zoe Rodriguez of the Copyright Agency, manager of the Cultural Fund, whom I thought would be here, happened to visit and said, do you have any national projects that you would like funding for? They're a big push at the Cultural Fund, which she manages, which Kim Williams chairs. And so I said, well, do we have a program to put to you? And the Cultural Fund duly funded it, as it is funding, almost fully funding, the States of Poetry project for 3 years. Important funding from that organisation. This is great for the magazine, and I hope for students and teachers and lovers of poetry. One of the great things for my magazine is that it, instead of publishing as we did in the past, about 40 poems per year, we now, through States of Poetry and through Poem of the Week, are publishing about 300 poems each year. And so I acknowledge and thank Copyright Agency's wonderful support for States of Poetry, which is this online resource. Very briefly about States of Poetry, they're nearly all up. Tasmania will follow. Each of the state editors chooses 6 poets and then chooses about up to 5, in nearly every case 5 poems. They appear on our website, open access, as I have mentioned. Each year there'll be some turnover in the state editors, but total turnover with the individual cohort of 6 poets each year. There'll be a new cohort of New South Wales poets next year, and that's as it should be. We wanted this to be really representative, and happily for us, there will be a book anthology at the completion of probably the 3rd year arising from this. It's wonderful to be launching the New South Wales States of Poetry at Gleebooks, most appropriate place. This follows earlier launches in Adelaide and Brisbane. I do want to thank Liz Allen for her work on this. A lot of work goes into it. Those of you who have anthologised in the past know how much reading and discrimination goes into works of this kind, especially when the model is new. We publish a mini anthology from it, 1 poem per poet, in the current issue, which is on sale tonight, the May issue, which is over there, and I'm sure the poets who are present will happily sign their poem for you. In David Malouf's case, there in fact we published 3 of David's poems, editor's license, if you like, for David Malouf, who is, as you may know, the ABR Laureate. Last year in Melbourne at a function attended by many hundreds of people, we named this esteemed and much loved poet, novelist and much more writer, the ABR Laureate, a new position. And the idea of this was to honour a great writer, but also to find a way to assist another writer nominated by the laureate at a formative if I can put it like that, stage in their writing career. I liked David's response when I phoned him up and asked him if he told him about this and asked if he'd like to do it. And he liked the fact that that the money went elsewhere and there is a payment to the fellow to help her buy time to embark on a major new work. David nominated Michael Aiken, from whom you will hear shortly, and I'll leave it to Michael to talk about the work, this fabulous work that he's embarked on, that I can't wait to publish in the August issue of Australian Book Review this year. But I will note that David and Michael will be in conversation about the work, and Michael will read extensively from it at the University of Sydney on Wednesday, August 3. Will be advertised extensively in the magazine and elsewhere. August 3, if you want to come and hear Michael read from the work and a discussion about this work. But now I'll hand over to Liz to introduce our poets. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I'm now going to read a brief extract from my introduction to the anthology before introducing each poet who'll read for you. And rather than just giving you biographical information about each poet, I thought I'd also remark on what struck me as interesting about their poems that I selected for the anthology. Editing an anthology of poets from New South Wales is both a wonderful and confronting task. Wonderful because you get to spend close reading time with the work of poets you greatly admire. Confronting because of all the excellent poets that you might include. However, one can take comfort in the fact that this anthology is going to be an annual occurrence, and in that sense is cumulative, with a new cohort of 6 poets each year. I look forward to seeing it unfolding over time in its various iterations, and I feel really honoured to present this inaugural collection. The poetry included in this year's anthology has a certain quality in common. It unsettles the reader's relationship to language and to everyday phenomena, and it generates new and unexpected perceptions and imaginings. I've also chosen poets who contribute to the broader poetry community as teachers, editors, mentors, reviewers, and/or event organisers. Here are 6 New South Wales poets I wanted to share with you. I hope you enjoy living with them as much as I do. David Malouf was born in Brisbane in 1934. Since Interiors in 4 Poets in 1962, he's published poetry, novels and short stories, essays, opera librettos and a play, and is widely translated. One of our greatest writers, an Australian Book Review's laureate, he finds ways of expressing very difficult things in a way few other poets can, to speak for what we have no other words for. Sometimes I see David sipping coffee under neon lights at the busy Broadway shopping centre, watching people come and go. I was pleased to be able to juxtapose this mental image of him with those of his late poem, a hushed and contemplative reflection on a much quieter coffee drinking experience. David will now read a few poems for us.
Thanks, Liz. First of all, thank you to ABR and to Peter. I mean, it is wonderful to have a magazine like that, which had its beginnings as a very, very narrow, really, reviewing magazine, open up in the way it has over these last years, so that it is now really one of the places where you read the largest possible number and range of poems. And of course, they have a prize, which is a very, very considerable prize. Also, thanks to Liz, who I know took a great deal of trouble in choosing both her poets and their poems. So thank you, Liz. I'm going to read 3 short poems. The first one is Sunday Afternoon. It's from 2 poems, really, that are about sitting on my balcony, and which I do for a great part of the day, especially in the winter because it has a lot of sun, and just watching the events in the street, which provide you with lots and lots of material. So that's this first one. Today, in Sunday weather, grevillea leaves in turmoil, no evident breeze. A sugar hit, a honey eater, upside down, a tilt and tumble. The body also in Sunday mode, the mind idling on automatic, with no need to be occupied or coloured, having come at last to the end of a long apprenticeship in learning to leave well alone. No empire to account to, no account books to square. The anxiety of nothing in hand, nothing in prospect, set aside for a bird in a bush, just one, warm air at play in the wind chimes, whose only news is that our truant sea breeze has clocked in, and from further off, instant astir, the airborne voices of children in a world all swing and seesaw. And this poem is called Terms of Endearment. Sweet nothings in our ear, cherub, pumpkin, dearest chuck. But to the heart, which is the better listener, the password to a tongue that only two in their comings and goings have access to. A blessed mouthful drawn from a stream that is forever fresh and on our lips forever true, however casually we call upon it to speak for what we have no other words for. What we catch at a glance, or in a breathless moment, what catches us at the first touch. And this is the short poem, which I call Late Poem, which is the one that Liz referred to. I can't believe how over these years coffee has become one of the most important commodities in one's life. And it really is, as something has now become of that kind of ritual of the morning coffee and of that kind of little cup with its sort of dark mouthful that's become something that is part of the continuity of things, but also is full of kinds of revelations. Maybe it's the state in which you are at the moment when you come to it. And that's really what this poem's about. A soft October morning, adagio sostenuto. Some part of me is still delayed in sleep. It is one with night, with daylight stars, moths that fumble at a window pane, bewildered that this tract of sky, like no other, will not yield. The coffee cup, double espresso, is deeper than it looks. Each sip I take, a dark reaffirmation, a practice run for the big sleep. Thank you. And I just must say, it's a great pleasure to have Michael here. I haven't heard Michael read before, although I have read his work. So that's a pleasure for me, but it's also, I hope, will be a pleasure to all the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So Michael Aiken is a writer living and working in Sydney. His first collection, A Vicious Example, published by Grand Parade Poets in 2014, was shortlisted for the New South Wales Premier's Kenneth Slessor Prize. As we've mentioned, he's the inaugural ABR Laureates Fellow, selected by David Malouf. As the Laureates Fellow, Michael Aiken will work on an extended narrative poem in the epic tradition, written in rhythmic free verse, and ABR will publish the finished work. Anthony Lawrence has said of Michael's poems that they are minimalist in style and expansive in scope. He has the ability to infuse a poem with menace and tenderness, often within the same line, and he does so with a quiet yet potent confidence. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks very much, Liz. And I'd just like to say thank you to David and to Peter and ABR and also to Liz and the writers tonight for having me. I'm really quite delighted to get to read with such an interesting and diverse and quite striking group. It seems to me like quite a microcosm of contemporary Australian poetry, so it's really a delight. And also thank you to my friends and family for coming along tonight and to everyone else who made the time to come tonight to celebrate the launch of the anthology. I'm always really tempted to give a lengthy introduction to this work that I'm working on because to me it's quite different to what I have so far published. But the last time I did so, a fellow poet said to me, you really don't need to do that. He said, just let the work speak for itself. And I do think the title speaks for itself. It's called Satan Repentant. And it is a poem very much about remorse and contrition. And as I'm discovering as I write it, it's also becoming very much about the relationship between someone who seeks to be forgiven for something they themselves can't believe could be forgiven, the relationship between them and the only person who can give that forgiveness, and that power relationship and how valid it is to set somebody up as an absolver and set against the backdrop of the sort of Judeo-Christian mythology, I suppose. So that's probably enough introduction. Anyway, I'm conscious of time. So I'm just going to read a couple of pieces from it, fragments, I guess. The whole thing is one continuous narrative, but it's far too long to read tonight. So this is just the very opening when Satan decides to repent. On burnt and broken pinions, the morning star implored the earth to drag himself out of hell. Bedraggled, torn, he burning still from the fires of that place so recently escaped, soared across the width of the world for a ladder, a path, a rope. Finding none, was forced to creak and howl like an albatross across the starry expanse, cold but illumined, to those gates such ages since cast out of in disgrace. And that one named Saint by his supporters, so late since Lucifer's days in heaven installed to guard the gates, stepped forward with his record and a hand raised for the guards. What seek you here, enemy of everything? Spoke the immortal mortal saint. At this new slight, not so much to previous glorious esteem in which the star once was held, as to the earnest, hard-worked journey just completed, the fixed mind and high disdain he believed in himself to have mastered, reared up at once and the beast returned, ripped off the head of that authoritative saint, muscles bulging and sinews contorted to the pulse of insulted pride, dismembered his corpse and flagellated that same with its own limbs, bellowing, "How fucking dare you!" before that magic host dwelling within could lay aside their harps and contemplations to rescue their murdered friend. So not to look at the right hand as he approached, Satan lowered his head. "I know, I'm going," and dropped like a stone, sleek, dead-weighted by the grief and guilt renewed anew, immediately to reappear in his black pit. Now I'm going to skip to another part. So I was reading the headline of the heading of the next part and confused myself. That first bit is the opening scene of the poem, and it's also the earliest part that I have been working on for some time. This next part is quite new to me, so I feel a little bit exposed to read it, but also excited to share it with you. This is opening with a group of angels discussing the fact that Satan has been given the chance to find forgiveness by choosing to become human and try and live a life as a human, and they're not happy about it because they're worried that he's going to be the favourite child again when he gets back into heaven. So they're all sitting around talking about what they can do to fix this. What would you have us do? One junior in the hierarchy needlessly overzealed. Watch for now, said Raphael, and wait for that time when we may press Jophiel, turn him away from his paradise. That angel named gave up a sigh, as though to haul a harness to his back. My work is never done. Their leader drew in dirt around their feet. For now, this child must know disconcert, synchronous with natural harmony. Make him displeased to exist in his skin. Make him a mocker of all he belongs. An eager servant took up the charge, descended toward earth. Finding Satan, a child and small, Abdiel's boldness grew. Watching grew restless, and restless grew willful, and Abdiel pursued the wandering child closer, yet closer each day. Through fields and forests, the baby Satan climbed enfolded in that protective mind, so long his cause of crime. Strangely unaware, Abdiel the cherubim healed behind odd trees. Satan gave attention to a gnat, the bark beneath those wandering feet. Pouring crystallized weevil thing, he longed to carve such shapes in his mind, to know, like an egg in all its perfection, how the arachnid's limbs link and the psyllid's husk grows. As Abdiel approaches, his urgency belies him. Before Lucifer can sense the breath emanating from that illumined corpus, the chain of insistent surging pulse exterminated the gnat at his hand. He turned and saw the angel unveiled, standing beneath a tree. "You've been watching me." "Many years, stupid child," the angel gave honestly his little esteem for the enemy. No servant of God from before the fall could deny themselves their hatred. "Begone, foul thing, whatever you may be. I am permitted here. You should not." "How speak you as though with authority over me, stupid human? Do you know who I am?" I should point out at this point Satan doesn't know anymore that he's Satan, really. "How could I? How could you indeed, and yet how you speak? Do you know who I am, miserable alien?" The messenger stopped and held his shoulders, scoffing. "Of course, you are our enemy, enemy of everything. And yet you have killed the gnat." The heavenly kin downcast briefly, his eyes glowed cornflower as he gazed at Satan. "All creation, that is what you swore against." The child stood indignant and aghast, overcome by horror at the accusation of crimes outliving him. "You lie, you swore." No longer, Lucifer threw his fist in the air and Abdiel met the challenge. "Silly, willful child, you seek to destroy an immortal. Why not eat the earth for sustenance for all the logic you know?" Abdiel knocked the child down and ground his face in the dirt. Satan's head came twisted back and wrapped the angel's leg. Both entwined, biting and gripped, struggles through the bush. "What are you?" the child fierce held back tears, alone from home and tormented by this thing of air and light. Abdiel slivered and turned to water to writhe free from his grip, twisting the child between two boughs, coughing and starting again. Lucifer shook free the pain, kicking the angel down. For hours more they struck with stones and punched and ran and spat. No ground to gain, the babe unclear what this wingful thing could seek. The beatings came and were gone again, the child drawing air faster than the thing of lightness could inhale the size of the sun. Abdiel collapsed, spent and crawling, bellied towards a cliff. "I'm not done with you yet," child Lucifer gripped the heel of the winged and flightless seraph. "Tell your friends I'm here to stay, angel. I'll not shirk before your tormented threats. I can do what I will. More human than you, I will become more human yet and ascend." Abdiel cast back and saw the dormant ideas of that repentant Lord awake, discreet and dignified light shining behind his head like a terrible warning from God. The child collapsed and the angel gave gasps, dragged himself beyond the ledge and took flight again to heaven. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Kate Middleton is the author of the poetry collections Fire Season, which was awarded the Western Australia's Premier's Award for Poetry in 2009, and Ephemeral Waters, which was shortlisted for the New South Wales Premier's Award in 2014. From September 2011 to September 2012, she was the inaugural Sydney City Poet. In her poetry, Kate displays an intricate knowledge of many topic areas and texts. She follows her obsessions with enthusiasm and takes her willing readers along for the ride. Here she takes us into a Rubens painting, into the Wizard of Oz, and into the belly of a whale. Kate adroitly uses similes to bring together ideas which at first seem contradictory, but then make perfect sense. A lion is as patient as an avalanche, while the ground beneath Dorothy's feet glows like ruby, dense and knotted as blood. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to Liz and Peter. I was just thinking how long it is since I basically started having a relationship with ABR, and I was such a baby poet back then. And also thank you to all the poets reading tonight for really bringing your sartorial game. Everyone's looking great. As it happened, there were a little group of animals in here, so I thought I would choose my animals. So I'll start with a mouse. I write a lot about rats and mice because I'm really interested in the role they play in scientific laboratories as we try to extrapolate possible human futures. And so this is from a study that was written about on the BBC a few years ago. Mouse, Wunderkammer. Cut out a sixth of the heart. At a day old, furless, close-eyed, resembling nothing so much as an infant's thumb, he can survive it. The mouse can regrow that missing part in 3 short weeks. Aesop knew it. To be mouse-hearted is as good as wearing the swagger of lion. His heart, perhaps the size of a Lilliputian walnut. Barely a mouse, already ripped apart. He does not wait for a god hand to put him back together. Alone he blindly furrows toward wholeness. Liz mentioned the lion that comes from Rubens. So I lived in DC for 2 years, and in the National Art Gallery there's an amazing, huge Rubens painting of Daniel in the Lion's Den, which I used to go and read in front of when I had study that I was meant to be doing but could do anywhere, because the lions had the most amazing paws. And then next to the painting is a small sketch, his study, and I love that sketch. Study of a lion. In black chalk, the beast brusques forward. Silence. Rubens has stopped his mouth with a single line. He is already awed by the den he will find himself in, even now as his mane curls into wisp of emptiness. A study on paper. But there, in white chalk, the grim pose brightens into recognition, smudged nose bent toward the scent of viewer. Eyes steadily lighting toward the years, one swift textured paw lifted ever so slightly, patient as an avalanche. And to increase in size, let's go to the whale. The equal most famous whale in literature, who in Jonah and the Whale, though is now translated as a whale, in the first English translation was simply called a great fish. Jonah. The great fish, terrible colossus, dark cathedral of days and nights, arrests lost Jonah in his flight. 3 days and nights spent in wet, earnest prayer, dread dows of whales, appetite, drowse of oceanic will. It is a liturgy of krill, a pinwheel spun in blur of hope, despair, the shroud of stomach's wall, grave, chamber draped in sacred bile, 3 days lost, 3 nights, till their cadence, amen, resolves. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Pam Brown has been actively involved in a diverse gamut of poetic activity since the 1970s. Pam is a contributing editor for several magazines and independent publishers, most recently for Cordite Poetry Review. Vagabond Press published her new collection, Missing Up, in December last year, and a bilingual edition of her poems, Alibis, translated into French by Jane Zamiro, was published by Société Jamais Jamais in 2014. Reading Pam Brown's poems is a bit like watching jazz. It can feel like she's going off on long solo improvisations. Things from the outside world, a train announcement, a sign she passes, interweave themselves with her inner melodies and she seems to play with the sounds and rhythm of words as much as with sense and nonsense, as in this passage, "Rain taxi, book thug, I ate all your bees." Please welcome Pam Brown.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you for including me in this really varied anthology, and thanks to ABR for the whole project. And I just want to say one thing first, though. I have a poem in ABR. I have a poem in the. They generously gave me a whole page, but I want to just point one thing out, because poets are very very exacting and meticulous about lineation, and it's my fault. But Amy Bayeux sent me the proofs for this poem, but I was away overseas, and I didn't have a copy of the poem with me, so I didn't proof it. So I just want to say, if you read it in the magazine, there's a line here. It's a poem called Ascriptions, and it sort of addresses Agnes Martin and then talks to Mo Tucker, who was the Velvet Underground's drummer. But here, Mo Tucker goes sort of zhooking off to the edge of the page, and really, if you just bring that back a bit, you could pencil it back or something. But online, it's perfect, and in fact, it's sort of roomier online in a way. So I think probably be better to read it there. Anyway, I'm still I'm still really grateful though. Okay, I'm going to read the other poem that's that Liz chose. November now. On the first night, cuckoo, karoo, falsetto blues singer, blinded by the hurt, because I'm blinded by the hurt. Troubling refrain, slowly building backing singers. It's intersubjective. I join them. Cuckoo, karoo, blinded by the hurt. Repeat. Anti-day, every day, partly cloudy in Wiley Park. Jan taught the beats to a secular mix at Wiley Park Girls' High School after her job on Tribune, communist newspaper. Here am I in the train. This train will stop at Wiley Park. Jan, her whiskies and crime novels. The way cloud banks. This sign, do not visit after heavy rain, risk of tree failure. Glue gum, eucalypt haze, blue gumpsky, carabin, bunjalung, red gum. I can't help you. Third floor. Is every woman on the third floor here for a mammogram? There, a little poem tucked at the end of the lifestyle supplement, just a bit bigger than a horoscope chunk to give it its due. I can't help you. Going, going. Koala, powerful owl, gang, gang. Cuckoo, karoo. Documentary. The teabag tag jiggler dangling from Noam Chomsky's cup. Endearing. Troubled refrain. Real life tastes plastic anyway. Repeat. Electric money. To think the future. I've always had frugal expectations, thinking what cannot be thought. Wittgensteinian. Everyone's been to Paris or claims it, where influencers live and teach and children lift giant leaves and blow fluff. Start to loathe the sun shrivelling. Affordable viola planted for cheer. Wilted. Even the sun has cancer. Singed. No, signed. Repurpose funding. Get brand poetry t-shirts. Rain taxi, book thug, I ate all your bees. Noodle bowls, trestle table, white cloth, pristine, cool embroidered edges, lidless jars, potent chilies, fresh bean shoots, mint. Nothing under the bed, just dust and a 5-cent piece. I don't give a. Windows rattling, blind cord bead, tap, tap, a southerly. What's there to say? You went away twice. You didn't die. Money, language, time. Electric money, safekeeping beyond panic. An ethic, an epic. Writing to say, hooligan affection takes up all the time. Standing waters, watery metaphors persist. Putrefied slime, mites, malaria, misaquaterists, forbidden swamp, filthy mire, nether regions, fountains of youth, marshes, ague. Thinking with undoes things, and the future talked past. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. Toby Fitch is based in Newtown. He's the poetry editor of Overland and the program director for the Australian Poets Festival. He also works as a bookseller here at Gleebooks, a teacher of creative writing at the University of Sydney, and runs the Sappho Books Poetry Night next door. His books include Rorschach, which won the Grace Levin Prize for Poetry, Gerilderies, and the Bloomin' Notions of Other and Beau, which we launched here on Saturday. Toby Fitch's poems possess an unusual physicality and form beautiful and intriguing shapes on the page. They are clever and energetic, full of wordplay, puns, and politics. Reading them is like sliding down a slippery dip. They are also inversions of Rimbaud's Illuminations, another ride down the slide, this time maybe backwards. Thank you, Toby.
Democracy with a Z. You salivate over the lavish merch and navigate the route the riot marches down. Pour lemonade into your filters, watch it fizz with the aura of philosophy, confit the poor, toys and velour lining your demon creche, where right wings cook the science, left wings wilt, where the schism you imp about cycles and the ex you con script says au revoir. It's get on or get off if you surf on ice, service the military, exploit the monstro, city in yourself and your peak industry body perks. Apply. It pays to be trumped up. Logarithmic, crazed exponent of that power to which revolting masses stick. Oh, center your cynic for some scenic prostitution. Pawn off your core values and move ever forward. Even the fixed come unfixed as iPhones on the blink keep snuffling the paywalls, patois, paths so logical. It's tough love you illuminate. Swipe right, eat the drapes, eat everything night drips with. So as Liz said, these are versions or inversions of Rimbaud's Illuminations. This whole book is, I guess. Like that one, this one takes the French sounds and finds English sounds. Similar English sounds for them. So like, it's homophonic translation, but it's also going backwards through the poem. Not that that really matters. This one's a little slightly grubbier, if you can do that. It's called Diva Maintenance, and it's after the French Maintenant d'ivresse, which I think is something like morning of drunkenness. But this happens, I think, at night. Diva Maintenance. Her temper tanties sus, but your mites say sassies, entering the pleather dome, looking poised with noose and savvy, much obliged to glorify her cunning, firm and tout its nous for oblivion, where the pert velvet diva never lets you rest, your glass head, in which infinity pools, rotating with lust, voice toots from the comments field, dissing your angel, figuring abject horror and austerity, measures your crutch, slave reared as an infant's souvenir. You stick a band-aid over and own to pervert the curse of just eyes, commerce purrs with, amour, whenever you feign amen to her abortion. You think of Maldoror, honour dents your lava, humbles the dead science of your hairy elephant, violence, so reset the dementors to aim at corporations. Her competition in the night sky neuters your who-man fate reconstellating into dignified renditions. Ancient and harmonic, it's the pumice's land, where serum is eked out, and for the phone of it, you make a meme of yourself, sharing with electric fingers this poison in your veins to maintain. Cut and comb again the veneer her elegant perm foils. You parry and sight, though technically it's lice marbling your corpse. In back alleys, they clack like louvres bare-backed, freaking out in a Chevy touche. Oh man, she's beaut. What an omen. Bored, a Ouija face, terrific rack, atrocious fanfare all point out how bent the moonbeams. This one, I'll finish with this one. Thank you very much, Liz, for choosing my work, and to Peter for the whole States of Poetry project and ABR and stuff. This one's called Movement. Like Liz said, a lot of the poems in my work and in this book are visual. There's one online that ABR did as Poem of the Week, which is also included in this anthology. It's like 5 shapes, square, triangle, circle, hexagon, and a heart. And read it online. It's kind of easier, better to see it on the page. But I also introduced it so you can hear me talking about it, and I happened to record it on the toilet in my house because that's the best sound I could get out of it. This last one's called Movement, Mauvement, and it's you probably can't see it, but it's diagonal down the page, and it's 14 lines, so it's technically a sonnet, I guess. Movement. Stunned amidships by astrological accidents, a young couple moved apart from each other, forsook all others on the ark for being wild, and began to sing for stillness. Deluded heroes of ism and disco, they went on to haunt in harmonious ecstasy through fields of clover. Meanwhile, endless paperwork hunted the refugees, were rolling dice. Hydra-licking motors' ink stirred the books with blood, squeezed from flowers, fire, jewelry, and the rest of us chattered heaps on our devices. Night was terribly studious, and torrential light thought dizzyingly of how there was no other option but to resort to leisure in company formation. The classy animals on the board became racist for sport. It was comforting to travel among such personal chemistry. We were the conch errors of the world. Our electric mail storm waterspouts became silicon valleys, new chemical high fashion due to all these incredible LEDs. Our Velo city has ramps and a giant gap to yawp through for the day we plummet over the falls. Thanks.
Thank you, Toby. Next up is Fiona Wright. Fiona is a writer, editor and critic from Sydney. Her poetry collection, Knuckled, won the 2012 Dame Mary Gilmore Award, and her book of essays, Small Acts of Disappearance, was published by Giramondo last year and shortlisted for this year's Stella Prize. She's recently completed a PhD at Western Sydney University's Writing and Society Research Centre. Fiona Wright's poems are open. I like that about them. Her voice, sometimes vulnerable, is often gentle and strong at the same time. Everyday images become quite surreal in her poems. For instance, in Crisis Poem, she takes a satirical look at gender stereotypes, which adds a strange twist to an otherwise normal backyard barbecue. Please welcome Fiona.
Thank you to everyone who's already been thanked, I guess. I'm going to start with a poem called After Mutability. It's written after a poem called On Mutability by the British poet Joe Shapcott, which I read and really loved. So After Mutability. Perhaps the best cells are the ones we can't kill off, a persistence of the fittest, although mutation's always painful. It's 2014 and I know no one who has been uninjured. It thinks in me, this shadow. I put on sunscreen and am surprised to come in contact with my skin. In the same day, I'm chatted up in a cafe by an aspiring novelist who's using boldface and an ugly font. And the woman I pay to tear the hair out of my legs offers a discount because my skinny limbs won't need much wax. In the same day, I watch a woman in pink board shorts hold out white bread for a spring-loaded terrier, an ancient cyclist on City Road with bubble wands mounted on his handlebars, although they say this place has gentrified, mutations never simple. I dream my top teeth splinter, turn to chalk dust in my mouth. So I am in the world's gaping jaw. I'm also going to read Crisis poem, one Liz spoke about. It's dedicated to my brother, although he doesn't know that, and he's never going to know that. I've already had family not speak to me for months because of poems. But to be fair, my brother's a policeman and is kind of famous in my family for asking me, yeah, I know you say it's poetry, but it doesn't rhyme. That said, I could never be a cop. It's a crisis poem. And suddenly, the men are holding beers and standing round the trampoline and not the barbecue, and turning over toddlers instead of steaks. The women make the salads. I'm going to finish with... that's it. Sorry. I'm going to finish with a poem called Set Piece, just a change in tone. Strange that there are sequences we live as cinema. If I looked over my shoulder, I might recognise the front wall of my bedroom opened out towards the camera. My furniture as hollow as a stage prop. I am vicarious to myself, strange that sometimes we recognise significance instead of burning it back in, much later and imperfectly. Some nights I wake up gasping at the air. I dream I'm trying through my sleep to speak, to call your name from the wet depths of slumber, but I can't will my mouth to move. If we are unknown even to ourselves, how can we try to hold each other still? I sit against the bedhead, my knees press against my breasts. Outside are stars, a car door slamming, the last train shunting back into the depot. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the poetry readings. I also wanted to thank ABR for this opportunity to edit this anthology. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you to all the poets for so willingly sharing their poems with me. And thank you to Jamie Hansen and Peter Rose for helping me edit my introduction. All the poets have books which are on sale tonight, and obviously there's copies of ABR also on sale, and people will sign for you if you'd like them to. So thank you very much for coming. Cheers.